Good afternoon again. So this is the ATEM Software Control, again available for download from the Blackmagic Design service page. Click on the ATEM, shows all their stuff. The software is updated very regularly. There a lot of devices across the ATEM line, and so sometimes they'll put out an update that only has updates for specific products on the line, but it all works for all of the products. So like the last update was for one of the more professional producer uh, units. While the previous one was specifically for the ATEM mini series. But about every month and a half or so, they're coming up with a new software update. Anyway, going through here is very similar to what we were looking at on the Mini Pro itself, except instead of one row of buttons, we have two rows of buttons. So the top row is the program. So that is what is active, and that is what is out on the stream right now. Preview is what's going to be next. So if I want to switch between my previews here, I can pick the different sources. And again, we have actual buttons for those colors that I was talking about. There's a button for color bars for testing and for that media player. So you have a few more buttons here than you did there. Still just the 4 camera inputs though. But this is changing what we're seeing on the preview that would be on the next transition. We select what we want, do the transition, and then we're live. If you see over here, if I push one of the other camera sources, see it's red. It's just cutting, and I'm just transitioning that without going through the program preview feature of it. There we go. A couple of different things to see there. So one thing that we can see when we hit the transition button, we see that both the program and the preview button are red. That's for that 1 second during that transition. Both of those sources are active. Otherwise, only what is red will be active. So you basically have two sources, two versions of the same thing, except one is your program bus, one is your preview bus. Hopefully that makes sense. Moving across, we're going to look at transitions. So the yellow button here is what is going to be transitioned when you push the transition button. So background is BKGD, and these over here are your backgrounds. If we select the key, that means it is only going to transition the key. We'll talk more about that. This is the upstream key. We'll talk about configuring that and kind of what that can be used for in just a minute. But for now, we're just going to be background. You can't unselect something. You can only unselect something when something else is selected, because you can't transition nothing. That would be pointless. So it doesn't let you turn it off unless you have something else turned on. On-air button. So when we do transition to a key, and we'll just go ahead and do that so you can see the on-air button comes on. Now we know that key is active. You can just touch it and it turns off, or the upstream key is connected to the transition, so we can just transition that and it goes away. Back down, we're looking at the transition style, and like we had on the actual unit, there are settings for these for sliding or different wipes and stuff like that. Those are done in the configuration palettes that we'll go over in just a minute, but just to show the different transition styles here. So there's the mix, normal crossfade, and we're at a 15-second transition speed here. You can change your transition speed here to whatever you want. So maybe you want a 5-second. Maybe you want a 5-second fade. Oh, that was a point. There we go. There's a 5-second fade. So very slow fade out. That's too long for me. I'm going to go back to 1 second here. But just to show you, you can change the rate of your transition there. The buttons on the unit also do that too. But your half a second, 1 second, 1.5 seconds, or 2 seconds are kind of the graduations that we have on that. So let's go back to 1 second. Dip, as we talked about, briefly transitions to a different source before completing the transition to...
So like dip through a logo, dip through a black screen.
Dip through a logo, dip through a blank screen, dip through a color, dip through any of the other sources. I'll show you where that's configured in just a minute, but that's exactly it. So you can, dipping through a logo, like I remember the cartoons from the 80s would transition between the scenes, and the Ninja Turtle shell would be spinning in between scenes or something like that. Wipe, again, we kind of know what a wipe is. If I had one thing that I didn't like about this is that there is no star wipe.
The classic star wipe.
No star wipe.
Doug Krejci will be very disappointed.
DVE will, digital video effect. So it's an effect through the transition. So that's kind of that. Again, cut button shows and then preview transition just kind of shows you on the preview screen what the transition is going to look like after the transition happens. T-bar functions like a T-bar. You can, if you have a touch screen, you can kind of transition at your own rate. If you auto and then stop it halfway and then do it again, it's not going to go back. It's going to continue the transition until it's done. Moving across. Now we're looking at a downstream key. And the downstream key and the upstream key are... what makes them upstream and downstream is where they are in relation to the transition in your putting your video together. So downstream key, obviously auto will transition that on, and you can see here, let me just change that to camera 2 real quick. You can see on the downstream key I have the media player set up as the keyer, so it's got the Paradigm logo there, and auto fades that out. The tie button makes it tie to the transition. So now when I transition that, it's going to transition that logo on superimposed over the background image.
And what you might not have seen there slightly off camera is he was setting up the preview to show the same camera just with the logo, so that way you could transition from the same scene and just bring the logo in. So theoretically, for our application, that could be a static camera shot and overlay the score or some sort of advertisement graphic or what have you.
Yeah, here's a... I can show you real quick something that might be used for. There, if you see on the little video screen there's a lower third of the organization, New Life Fellowship, and they can edit that graphic or whatever. They can put the pastor's name or whatever on there for that. But that's one good thing that downstream key is really good for, is putting on logos and stuff. Last button on here is the fade to black. Again, fade to black. You set your rate here. Fade at 1 second, fades to black, and then again in the setup of the software you can make that with or without audio. Okay.